questions. I wish we had time to get to each and every one of them, but we simply do not. Here is the format for the third round of question and answer. We will direct a question to one of our gentlemen up here tonight and give them 3 minutes exactly to respond. And once again, please hold any statements, any outbursts, so to speak, so that they can get through, because it is a short time. And then the other individual will have 1 minute of rebuttal. And then we will reverse the order, 3 minutes to the other gentleman and 1 minute of rebuttal to the other. We'll begin tonight with Dr. Hovind, since Mr. Till just gave his 20-minute rebuttal. Here's the first question this evening, and it's interesting. I had this one picked out as Mr. Till just brought it up. Dr. Hovind, how did the various races of people, Negro, Oriental, Native American, scientifically be brought out of one family if the flood destroyed all?
Okay, good question. That, of course, is assuming the genetic isolation that we have today. A group of white people could not probably produce a black person today, given any amount of time. But if we don't know the genetic makeup that Noah and his family had, may have been a combination of all of these races. What was the original race? What color was Noah? You'd have to assume he's white or black or one of the others, but if he had the genetic combination of all the races, there's an incredible amount of variation available in the genes. Ask any family with 8 or 10 kids if any of the kids are identical. They'll all be different. All the 600 people in this room tonight are very different. So diversity is the way of life. And I think you would have to assume, in order to think that it could not happen, you'd have to assume that Noah was either white or black, and that's where the faulty assumption lies. There's no problem. After the flood, shortly after the flood, the Tower of Babel incident took place, where God confounded the languages. I personally believe, though the Bible isn't clear, I believe that is probably where the races came into play, because the small groups of people speaking their own language went off to their own areas, and anytime you get a small group of people inbreeding back within their own kind, they develop unusual traits, like the Indians' high cheekbones or the blonde hair, blue-eyed of the Norwegians. That's a common feature of any small group inbreeding. I mean, ask any cattle breeder that. You isolate what the feature you want. If you want more beef or more milk, you just isolate those out. And I think probably it was the Tower of Babel incident within the first 150 years after the flood that caused the races to come about by purely natural processes. The evolutionist says they live near the equator and they got dark skin. Well, that's Lamarckism. Acquired characteristics are never passed on to the next generation. That's been disproven 150 years ago. I mean, if I get a great suntan, that has no effect on how my children are born. So the evolutionist would have the same problem, the same barrier. He couldn't prove it either. I would say, I would have to stand, though I wouldn't claim to be able to prove it, that the races probably began as a result of the Tower of Babel incident. I didn't get to finish my slide presentation, but after the flood, the oceans were smaller, which connected all the land masses. And if you look at a map of the world with no water in it, you'll see all the land masses just with the continental shelves are easily connected. The people could have walked any place, and then as those giant ice caps melted back, the water level would have been raised slowly, and by the days of Peleg, 100 years after the flood, the Bible says in the days of Peleg the earth was divided. So the continents weren't really separated until 100 years after the flood. During that time, the people had already had their languages divided at the Tower of Babel, and they spread out to these different continents, and then the small groups of people, inbreeding within themselves, peculiar traits became pronounced. Or maybe there were religious significances. Sometimes anybody who's an oddball born in a tribe is sacrificed, killed. Somebody may want a peculiar trait and develop that in their own family. Hitler tried to kill everybody that wasn't German. I mean, we see that today. So I don't know. I couldn't prove that, but that's a plausible explanation. Okay.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hovind. And Mr. Till, your response.
Well, he may think it's plausible, but I see no plausibility at all to it. I'll repeat again, there isn't an evolutionist on earth who would think that diversity like that could happen in such a short time, even if isolation like this took place. You'll criticize punctuated equilibrium, and you'll scoff at it. But the theory of punctuated equilibrium says that these changes took place over perhaps 100,000 to 200,000 years. But I want to show you a flaw in his theory about the Tower of Babel. In the 10th chapter of Genesis, the family of Shem is taken up. Ham, Japheth, and it tells us that they became the father of this nation and this people and that people, and it says after each section, these are the sons of Ham after their families, after their tongues, in their lands, in their nations. That's all through the 10th chapter telling us that they spoke different languages. And then we go into the 11th chapter and it says, and the whole earth was of one language. And then it tells the Tower of Babel story. If you people say there are no contradictions in the Bible, you need to read it, dust it off, see what it really says.
Till. Mr. Till, the question has been asked, why must creationists explain God said to Noah, but evolutionists are not required to explain missing links, for which no scientific evidence exists?
Well, that doesn't really relate to the flood, but I'll be glad to give my answer to that. There are no missing links. What were the Australopithecines? Have you people ever heard of the Australopithecines? Fossils that have been found. They're not human, but they're not apes either. They're somewhere in between. Let's wait till they finish laughing. I wonder how many of those who are laughing have bothered to go to the library and check into this. If you do, you'll find pictures of anthropologists sitting in their studies with skulls all over the place, and anyone can look at them and see that obviously these skulls are not from the same species, but they obviously are human-like in their appearance. And the fossils indicate that Australopithecines walked upright, but they had a small brain cavity. And it wasn't until, I believe, Homo erectus developed that the brain took on a size that enabled the hominids to make stone tools and use them to their advantage. So if you'll investigate the record, I think you'll see that that's creationist propaganda, that transitional forms don't exist in the fossil record, because they certainly do.
I don't know if we can cover this in 1 minute. If we get slide carousel number 2, slide number 17, Australopithecines, what he's referring to is Lucy, is the most complete fossil found. Lucy is the most complete, 40%, found by Donald Johanson, 1974, in the Ohora Gorge in Africa. Donald Johanson claims he found this missing link, Australopithecine. Lucy was 3 feet tall. It was obviously a chimpanzee. Did it jam up on you? Okay, hold it right there. Forget it then. Let me just tell you about it. Donald Johanson's Lucy was 3 feet tall. His argument was that Lucy walked upright because the femur bones, I'll get it, okay. The femur bone was angled out. From the knee joint, it angles out to the hip like a human femur does. I've seen many detailed pictures of Lucy. What Donald Johanson does not say in his book, and I have his book, Lucy, the Beginnings of Humankind and Blueprints, Mysteries of Evolution, Donald Johanson does not say that any tree-climbing monkey has an angled femur. Every monkey that climbs trees has an angled femur. He purposely used a ground-dwelling monkey like a chimpanzee, which has a straight femur, as his argument that Lucy was becoming human. He does not say in the book that he found the leg bones for Lucy 1.5 miles away from the head bones. The leg bones were 200 feet deeper in a different layer of strata. I would like to know how fast the train was going that hit that chimpanzee. His missing link argument, he is misinformed. I challenge you to read the quote book on the back table out there, the revised quote book. Ask any intelligent evolutionist if they really have any missing links. They'll say, no, sorry, we're still looking for them. See, the whole chain is missing. Okay. Dr. Hovind, a question directed to you is, an anteater eats 250,000 ants each day. We are getting around to the flood here, and I had to go through these and try and find a lot of questions related just to the flood here. An anteater eats 250,000 ants each day. On the day that the animals left the ark, what did the anteater eat? Well, again, you're going back to the assumption that all the animals as they are today is the way they were before the flood. And the Bible teaches a very different story. Since this is about the scriptural account, the scripture says all the animals were vegetarian before the flood. That's what it says, Genesis 1, 29 and 30. After the flood, with the climate changes and the decrease in air pressure, the release of the canopy being gone, I would say the animals gradually got a diversity in their diet. People today can live fine on vegetables or meat, or you can have pure meat or pure vegetables, omnivores. So I wasn't there. I'm not going to prove what they ate. I know ants multiply awfully rapidly. And I would say within a short time you'd have plenty, especially if there's only 2 or 3 or 4 anteaters to begin with. As far as the created, he mentioned the clean kinds. Maybe we shouldn't give a rebuttal here, but the kinds is in Leviticus. Clean and unclean animals in Leviticus. We're talking about Genesis. This is way before Leviticus. How does he know the giraffes were clean? Clean hadn't been given till after the flood, long after the flood. So the ants, as far as what did they eat, the diets, I would say, would gradually change with the new environment they had to live in.
Mr. Till?
Well, one thing that I'm learning is that there is a lot of difference in opinion among the creationists, because the creationists will take a situation as it exists today. I believe the Pronuba moth and the Yuma plant is one of their favorite illustrations. The two are dependent upon each other in a way that I don't have time to explain. And the creationists will argue, you see, if they had not been created instantaneously, then neither one of them would be here today, because the moth couldn't have waited for the Yuma plant to evolve, and the Yuma plant couldn't have waited for the moth to evolve. You see, they want to play both sides of it. When there is an issue like that seems to dispute their side of it, about anteaters having to have 250,000 ants today, they go, we don't know. That's what they ate back then.
All right. We're going to go till roughly somewhere in the neighborhood of 8:45 here, but this next question is to Mr. Till. I'm going to combine 2 questions here, as these are very similar. Wouldn't the pitch or the tarry substance used by Noah keep out the water and thereby prevent the problem of warpage, etc., as you described? And to combine that with, what about the width of the boat affecting its ability to keep from warping under pressure?
Well, whoever wrote that has a bigger problem than I have, if he thinks that poses one for me. Pitch is a petroleum product, and according to the creationists, that didn't develop until we had the catastrophe of the flood that buried all the forest under intense pressure, and then over a process of time, oil reserves and coal and all of that developed, and pitch would be one of them. So it seems to me that when God told Noah to cover the ark with pitch inside and out, that Noah had a big problem, because when he went to the store to get his pitch, he found that there wasn't any, that it didn't exist back then, according to the creationist argument. So that's a problem for you, that's not a problem for me. And I'm going to be honest with you, I do not know whether shipbuilders in the last century tried to use pitch or not. But I suppose that with technology having developed to the extent that it had at that time, that they would certainly be aware that this was a possibility, or perhaps they had even a better product than pitch that they tried to use as a sealant. And still they couldn't prevent the warping, according to all of the research that I'd done.
Your rebuttal, Mr. Hovind.
Well, of course, his assumption is that the pitch had to be from an oil product that was formed after the flood. Oil can be made from a number of things. I mean, corn oil, safflower oil, sunflower seed oil. You can get oil from a number of vegetable sources. So the idea that it had to be an animal derivative. Of course, the Bible doesn't mention about the fish. They were, of course, not on the ark. And as far as Noah, that's what fish is frequently used to make oil. Scientists in the laboratory several years ago took a ton of vegetable material and under pressure converted it to a barrel of oil,